Hello everyone, my name is Nick Silvestro and today I'm going to be talking to you about the effects of fasting versus feeding in combination with exercise. Unfortunately, I won't be able to give this to you live because I do have another class at that time, but I'm just going to record that for now. So just an overview of what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to go over some general background information. Then we're going to look at 3 different studies because both of them, or all of them, looked at combinations of fasting and exercise, but aim to examine different things. The first one looks at eating behaviors, the second one looks at body composition, and the third one looks at performance and metabolism. And then we'll just go over the 3 of their conclusions together. So the background information, what is fasting? So we're going to define fasting as the absence of the intake of energy for a prolonged period of time. Now this can be for hours, days, or alternating days, as we'll see in a study later. And then we're going to define aerobic exercise as exercise that uses oxygen to fuel the body while it works. And these are typically cyclical movements that use large muscle groups such as running, swimming, and things like that. We're going to define anaerobic exercise as exercise that uses muscle stores to fuel the body while it works, such as weightlifting. So looking at the first study, this one looks at the effects of exercising while fasting and the effects of eating behaviors and food intake. So the hypothesis was that exercising while alternating fasting days may increase effective weight loss. So they examined adaptations when using alternating day fasting in combination with exercise. So this study was designed, it had 64 people with 4 groups. So one group was combining alternating day fasting with exercise. One group only did alternating day fasting. One group did exercise only, and one was just a control group. And this took place over a 12-week period where food journals were kept and all exercise was supervised by a professional. So this study found that when it came to endurance exercise, it could be easily combined with alternate day fasting. And they did look at, throughout the 12 weeks, they did have days where the exercise was done on the fasting day in the non-fasting days. So it was concluded that it could easily be combined. Another conclusion was that adding in alternate day fasting into the exercise regimen did not increase the likelihood of a cheat meal. It was thought that, if you are working out on days where you don't have any intake, you might try to get a cheat meal in, but it was found that that actually did not happen, and there was actually positive behavioral changes with long-term study weight loss when they were combined. So the second study looked at body composition changes associated with fasted versus non-fasted aerobic exercise. So this background information was that providing nutrients before exercise has previously proved to have a large impact on the body's response in terms of what it uses as a fuel source. So the theory for this study was that fasting may shift the energy use away from carbohydrates and use the stored fat instead. So this design was that they had 20 healthy young females. They scheduled workouts and food plans for them, and the workouts were hour-long workouts, 3 times a week, all cardio-based. This was a 4-week process, and the testing sessions happened 24 to 48 hours before the start of the program to get the baseline information. And then they also did it again after the completion of the 4-week program. So, this study found that there were no significant changes in overall body mass, BMI, and fat-free mass. It did find significant changes for fat mass, body fat percentage, and waist circumference. So there we see if we do have a change in fat mass, but not a change in fat-free mass, the body fat percentage does change because that is the ratio. But in conclusion, there were some of these findings, but it does warrant further study due to the fact that this was only a 4-week trial, so they could do a longer trial period. And they did only use 20 participants, so it could be repeated with more participants, could be competed with males as well since they used all females. But it did show these findings, just take them with a grain of salt. So the third study and the final study did examine the effects of fasted versus fed state exercise on performance and post-exercise metabolism. So the hypothesis here was that The intervention of fasting before exercise may create an easier long-term approach to weight loss. So what this study did was look at previous studies and analyze them. Pre-exercise feeding may block the metabolism for fat, as we looked at before, making it harder to burn fat. So again, it's based on that idea that if the body didn't have fuel, it would use stored fat to help with fat loss. This study did initially have a meta-analysis of over 13,000 studies. You can see there's 13,138 studies. So they had some pretty strict criteria that they wanted to use for their analysis. They went through all of these studies and ended up using 37 of them because they did fit what they were looking for. So this third and final study did conclude that in terms of short-term exercise that lasted less than 60 minutes, there weren't really any prolonged changes between the fed and fasting individuals. The differences did come in terms of longer exercise. This was exercise that was greater than 60 minutes. So the fed individuals were able to perform better, generally perform longer, because they do have that extra circulating fuel source that the fasted individuals would not have. They also found that lipolytic enzymes were increased during fasted exercise. So this again points to the hypothesis that there would be a breakdown of the stored fat, which is what those lipolytic enzymes do. There were also increases in adrenaline, noradrenaline, growth hormone, and that was all during the fasted exercise. This wasn't seen as prominently during the fed state exercise. So what these things do are they increase fat utilization as well, kind of pair with the lipolytic enzymes. All of these body processes end up just using more fat. So their final conclusions were that fasted exercise promoted lipid utilization as a fuel source more so than fed exercise. So overall, since those were broken up through the 3 studies, these are just the general findings of the ones we looked at today. Fasting is combinable with exercise in various intervals. We did see that it was achievable with the alternate day fasting. There were positive behavioral changes in exercise. This is what happens with exercise in general, really. Once people start exercising, they tend to kind of watch what they eat more, kind of feel more regimented, those kinds of things. But they did find that there were positive eating behavioral changes where they didn't have those cheat meals. There was also reductions in fat mass, body fat percentage, and waist circumference, which we looked at earlier. There was decreased performance in long duration exercise, but that's somewhat to be expected. As you get above the 60-minute mark, you do need that fuel source somewhat more in order to continue. But overall, there was the increased fat utilization, lipolytic enzymes, growth hormones, and catecholamines being those adrenaline, noradrenaline that we looked at earlier. All those things that help with the process of using fat that's stored in the body. So the references are here. These are the 3 studies that I went over. If you're interested in taking a deeper look in them, or you just want to see them for yourselves, there they are for you guys. You guys can let Dr. F know, since I'm unable to be there in person. If you have any questions, and I'm sure she will relay them to me, and I will get back to you. Thank you, guys.